Well, welcome everybody to the Good Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. David Beers. And today on Good Medicine, we've got a great guest. Really excited to have Ryan Morley here. Ryan's a partner at a company called Springtide, and we'll learn more about what Springtide is. But we're talking about something that impacts every patient, every person that goes to get treatment from a doctor, but most people never see, and that is, how do new medicines actually get funded, and how do we pay for a new medicine to actually become something that actually helps people? And Ryan's kind of has a unique perspective because he's been on both sides of the table, where he's actually been involved in developing new procedures and new health technologies that benefit patients, and he's also been involved on the funding side of things as well. And so I think he's uniquely qualified to actually talk about this topic, and it's something that I deal with every day. It feels like, being somebody who's involved in trying to discover and develop new medicines, it seems like I never stop raising money. It's a constant thing, right? Because it's so expensive what we do. And we'll talk a little bit about why that is. But Ryan, thanks so much for joining us. I'm just so happy to have you here.
Thanks, David. We're excited to be here.
Great. Well, why don't we jump in and just talk a little bit about your background, just so people kind of get a sense of where you're coming from. So how did you end up at Springtide? What led you there, and how did you get involved in life science and healthcare, and how did that all happen in your life?
So my background is foundationally as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I helped lead 3 different organizations. My last was a digital health company is acquired by Teladoc. And then from a healthcare delivery perspective, I helped lead care delivery at a payer-provider health system and care delivery innovation. And then from a public policy perspective, I was the deputy finance director for Governor Romney, and also established a state-based model for healthcare innovation with the One Utah Health Collaborative with our governor. So take those facets foundationally as an entrepreneur, health system innovation, and public policy to my work as an early stage healthcare investor. I think that healthcare is a team sport. And so having different facets of healthcare innovation is really essential to really understand the payment, the discovery, and the implementation of healthcare innovation.
Well, that's awesome. And that's an amazing background. So not just entrepreneurial, but you've actually, sat on health policy and thought about, how do these medicines actually get applied to a population in a state and in the country as well. So that's great. That's awesome. So as you've kind of made that transition, I've noticed that the best people that I've worked with in the funding side of things are people that can actually relate to my problems, because it seems like a lot of times, and we'll talk more about like the process of getting something funded, but a lot of times, you get these guys right out of business school that really never done anything other than, this is their first job out of business school working in a fund. And, their perspective of what I'm dealing with might be a little different. So has that been, for you, do you see that as kind of a real advantage on your side, that you've been a real operator of a company, and that transition to actually be on the funding side? What advantage does that give you as somebody now that's looking at putting money into companies?
Our focus is early stage investing. And I think that paradigm and viewpoint of being an operator foundationally is truly tremendously differentiated in the way that we view problems and how we partner with our companies. Because we've been there before, we have, I think, a good understanding of what pieces we can add from our broader network. So just backing up a little bit, Springtide is focused on health and life science technology. We have a deep strategic network of over 120 different strategic organizations, payers, providers, pharma, and otherwise, that are part of our network ecosystem. And we put that together in a way that we can leverage those strengths and resources and needs to be able to support early stage companies. So not only whether it's strategic or governance or funding or people, it's all meant to be a broader ecosystem. And it comes from the place that we are operators.
Yeah.
And therefore, we want to be able to surround our companies with all the resources that are necessary. And specifically at the early stage of a company, you don't have all those things
That's right.
in-house.
Yeah.
And therefore, having investors as partners is really a critical point to be able to provide those resources.
No, I think that makes perfect sense. And that's, from a very early seed type of stage of really getting a company off the ground. I mean, just getting money is half of the battle, right? I think that's the easy thing to focus on and say, well, this is how much money I need. But really expertise and connections and, the fact that you guys have been there before. And I tell people all the time, if I were to go back in time, I probably made every mistake that you can make, right? I mean, unfortunately, as part of our business is figuring this stuff out, and the more times you do things, you learn by doing most of the time. But if you can put people that have made those mistakes early on in a company and not have to go through the pain and the suffering of going a wrong direction and pursuing something that from the outset, isn't going to work because, it's been tried before and or whatever I mean, it could put a company on a completely different track. So it sounds like that's a huge value add, that it's not just checks that you're writing. You're actually bringing a lot of expertise for that young, brand new company.
I think you made a really good point too, which is it's the failure of certain ideas is going to happen.
Yep.
And so time is actually the most precious resource.
Absolutely.
So funding only provides time.
Yep.
And for a team to be able to be able to work things out and be able to go through different iterations of a product. And I think that having the right investor partners around the table really shortcuts those loops of feedback.
Yeah, I think that's my experience as well. And unfortunately, I think part of it is, we learn a lot by the school of hard knocks, right? so you, like you said, there's always going to be mistakes. You can never not make mistakes, but hopefully you surround yourself with enough support that when you make those mistakes, that it's not going to be devastating, right? They're not going to be stuff that destroys the company. And that actually is a great segue, because I want to talk about like the very beginning. So you're involved in helping basically create companies, or at least give the initial financing to an idea. I know when I was young, and I'm a technical guy, right? I have a PhD. I came from an academic background, and I kind of naively believe that good science would always win the day. And I still kind of believe that. I think it's true, right? I think it's a huge component of what we do, but it's not enough. So from your perspective, when you're looking at an opportunity, I think most of the time a young entrepreneur is so focused on just the technical side of things to say, I have something that's nobody's ever done before. This technology or this discovery that I made is so unique and so different. How do you evaluate that stuff? I'm sure every single person that comes to you, that's the story they tell, right? They're like, I've made this discovery. I have this idea that no one's ever had before, and it's going to improve all this existing stuff. So I've funded companies, but mostly I've done it because I do dig into the technology, and I feel like I understand that. But from a holistic standpoint of being somebody who tries to evaluate technology and tries to evaluate not just technology but the opportunity. What are the things that you think about when somebody comes to you, and is it just the science that wins the day? Or are there other things that you're looking at to say, here's the boxes that I look to check to say, this is an opportunity I want to be involved with? BioHive is a nonprofit building, branding, and bringing together Utah's fast-growing life science ecosystem. Get involved today. BioHive's Women in Technology and Science community hosts events for anyone and everyone wanting to support women in life science STEM. And BioHive's Health Tech Hub community hosts events for those operating at the intersection of health and technology. Register for events and see what's buzzing at biohive.com.
Really interesting. There's both the quantitative and the qualitative aspects of this scenario. I think the most important actually is the qualitative attributes that exist. This really exists in the founder and the CEO, who really who has the responsibility to carry the water.
Yeah.
I think there's two attributes. One is that they're persuasive.
Yep.
And two is that they're pragmatic. I think that especially in the science realm, there can be a sense of disconnection from pragmatism, and that there can be we are right.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily fit in this current ecosystem of from a payment, regulatory, or even from the implicit and explicit incentives that exist within clinical operations. So I think that pragmatism and then also persuasiveness, there has to be a real raison d'etre to be able to pull people from funding, from sales conversations, from regulatory conversations, and from your own team to be able to pull those together. So I think that those are the attributes from a qualitative perspective. From a quantitative perspective, I think that there is an efficiency that really good entrepreneurs embody. They understand where to take risks and be able to have the time and the resources to do so, and be able to be pragmatic about those opportunities. And from a market perspective, being really aware of what the true total addressable market is, what the true factors are from the clinical delivery perspective and from a payment perspective. So I think, again, those quantitative and qualitative factors really coming down to driving who's successful or not just necessarily the science.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to put it. You probably said it better than I could, but I think we're on the same page of the way I think about it. And I think from being a technical person and seeing the world through, the inventor side of things, to say, that's what I spend my time thinking about is how can I solve problems? Part of it is, are you solving a problem that's really a problem, right? A lot of times, like I'll get people that come to me and say, breast cancer is a huge problem, which it is, right? I mean, we all hate breast cancer. It's something that we would love to cure, but they'll say, I found this new thing and it's going to take, this is the market size, it's billions and billions of dollars, and if this gets approved, it's going to take all of that. And it's funny because it's hard to argue. You can say that technology looks great. It connects that, but there's a disconnect of really the reality of how you take something. Like, I'm not sure it's even possible to get a drug approved for frontline breast cancer today. Like, it's really, really hard. Like, and most people would say, wow, that doesn't make sense. But when you understand the process of what you have to go through to make that happen, it's a real challenge, right? The way to actually make a difference is to go on 8th line breast cancer after they run out of all the other options, and then try to work yourself, once you get an approved drug, you work yourself back into the frontline setting. But it just feels like so many people that are very technology forward, facing people, they miss that component you said at the end, that of really how do you frame this opportunity in a way that you really understand what the market really is. And I see that all the time with people that are just like, my science is so good, and this no one's ever tried this, and this is going to change this whole market. But the naivete of saying, how do you actually go from here to there? And one of the great things that I got taught, my mentor was a very famous clinical development guy that ran a lot of clinical trials, and he always taught me that you work backwards. You say, okay, so if I want to get this drug, what does that registration trial look like? Like, what is the FDA or another regulatory agency going to ask me for? And so what do I need to develop from where I am today at an idea to get that information? And so you work backwards to say, okay, if I want to get frontline breast cancer, what do I have to do? And then you start working backwards. Pretty quickly, if you realize I can't do that, that's not a practical thing to do. But it's funny because in our world we get so fascinated by science. You see new therapies come up, cell-based therapies and gene therapies and all these things. It's just like, wow, these things could change the whole world. But then, there has to be some check there to say, okay, they could, but what's the path forward? And I've always, from who's going to pay for this side of things, right? That's another part that most of the entrepreneurs, if they're purely technical entrepreneurs and don't really have a lot of business savvy, that they're not thinking that way. So how do you approach with so a lot of entrepreneurs will spend a lot of time creating business models and all these models, and we know models. I mean, it's easy to build a model. It all comes down to the assumptions that you make and what I can build you a model tomorrow that shows that I can make $1 trillion off of it. But the reality is, how do you get, like, when you see that kind of data, what do you do with that? Is it, is it worth the time for the entrepreneur to spend a bunch of time trying to build these spreadsheets or whatever they use now to try to convince you to say this is a really good opportunity? What do you think when somebody walks in and says, I've done all the modeling and this is going to make billions and billions of dollars? Like what's your sense as an investor to say, is that worth spending time to do that?
You bring up a couple of really good points. One of the things that is such a privilege as a health technology and life science technology investor is to meet entrepreneurs that have extreme purpose. And it's really, I would say 90% of the founders that I interact with have a real reason for why they started their company. And it's usually a personal reason.
Yeah.
And I would say within the clinical setting, clinicians often have a patient that really influenced their reason to start this company and to solve the problem. And I think that that's markedly different than I have this really cool solution that I'm looking to find a place for.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a good place to start because there's really two groups of entrepreneurs, and it's really hard to deal with the latter.
Yeah.
Because they just cannot get over their current iteration of their product.
Yep.
Or therapy or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think it's really important when an entrepreneur understands the end customer and how it fits into the overall clinical ecosystem.
Yep.
There's a regulatory ecosystem, there's a clinical ecosystem, there's a funding ecosystem. And oftentimes I see challenges around the clinical ecosystem that they require, that there's, again, the implicit and explicit motivations and the way that work is done. And I think that that's really important to understand. At Springtide, we focus on elevating human health, not incrementally changing healthcare. And I think that there's an appreciable difference between the two of them, because oftentimes the incremental changes to healthcare are fairly uninteresting.
Yeah.
They are ways to exist in our current model. And we actually see tremendous innovation taking place as we address the core problem, which is health.
Yep.
It's a broader view of treatments. And when you think about the overall wheel of health, the social determinants of health and so on, healthcare is generally 15 to 20% of that wheel.
Yep.
And the rest is really influenced by other behaviors, situations, and so on. And so we really feel like the opportunity is that broader opportunity. And I think that whenever you're taking a solution, clicking out a little bit and saying, how can we actually solve the core problem rather than an incremental healthcare solution?
So I think that from my standpoint, that makes perfect sense as well. I don't want to spend my time trying to incrementally improve some part of this big machine that's out there. I tell people all the time, I want to change the world, right? And if I can come up with a therapy that saves people's life, it will change the world. And that's the remarkable thing about what we do is inventing, discovering, funding, and moving these new concepts for how to keep people healthier and how to promote health and how to treat people that are sick. And it's been interesting in my career. When I started, we only studied sick people. That was and people call our healthcare system, it's not healthcare, it's sick care, right? That we wait for people to get sick and we treat sickness. And you go to a cancer center, it's full of people with cancer. And so when you work there, I want to treat somebody that has cancer. And I feel, and I don't know if you get this sense, but there's a change happening that I think we've always talked about. My mentor used to tell me all the time, the best treatment for cancer is never getting cancer, right? That's the best way to ensure you're not going to die of cancer is don't get cancer. And that's easy to say. Obviously, it's having the tools to be able to provide people with opportunities to prevent disease has been really challenging for a lot of reasons. And part of those reasons are people are more focused on, when it becomes an emergency, when you have cancer, you want it treated. If you're spending 20 years of your life doing things that could create cancer for you later on, it's not as much of an emergency to fix that. And so that's always been the hard thing is how do you get people to change behavior, or how do you identify people at highest risk? But I get a sense, in today's world, things are changing. And part of it, I think, is our system is so expensive. We have to start thinking differently, that I don't think we can continue down the road of, I'm going to develop a drug for 10,000 people. I'm going to charge $1 million a person. I just don't think the future doesn't look like that to me. So what do you see coming to you now? And is that part of your lens and what you're thinking about as you're starting to think, what do I want to deploy capital and help move this down the path? Is that something you're seeing nowadays?
It is core.
What if you could get rewarded just for being healthier? Meet Galvin, the company using the latest blockchain technology to reward you for taking care of yourself. They help with your mind, body, and soul like a personalized health assistant to track your progress and help you feel better. Galvin's G Plus app rewards you for exercise and assesses your mental health in under a minute using AI and over 2,500 voice biomarkers. If you're feeling off, G Plus gives you personalized power-ups, science-backed techniques to help you feel better fast. And here's the best part. When you prioritize your wellness, you earn crypto. Ready to level up your health? Use promo code GOODMED20 at checkout for 20% off. Download G Plus today at the Apple app or Google Play Store and start your wellness journey with Galvin.
To our belief over the next 10, 20 years around the dynamics of where healthcare is going. And I kind of coined this as a new build of our health system. Our traditional healthcare system is really unable to move. It is so large, and the infrastructure is so difficult to incorporate innovation and to really change the trajectory. I think that there's the term value-based care over the last 10, 20 years has been used as a solution to be able to provide new opportunities to reduce the overall cost of care, improve quality, promote more proactive measures, and there has been some success. However, I feel that most of the value-based care initiatives have not worked at scale. And I think that there is a new opportunity here, I call it this new build, where our people, our consumers are gaining health care and addressing health needs in a different way. It's generally consumer driven. And I think that's going to continue as we see in the early 2030s, Medicare's financing coming to, it's a slow locomotive train wreck that we're seeing
watching
happening.
it right now.
And I think what that's going to be felt by our population is bigger and bigger individual financial responsibility. And that is going to be extremely hard for many people. However, one of the great things that's going to come from it is more of market-driven solutions, where I have a $3,000, $5,000 deductible. Who knows? It could go higher than that. Where I then say, well, how am I going to get specialty care? How am I going to track my overall wellness? How am I going to take the medications that I can't afford in an insurance realm? Maybe there's a direct pay. And so I think that there's going to be consumer-driven solutions that are going to come out. You've seen Novo Nordisk,
Yeah.
and with their GLP-1 offering. You've seen from a pharmacy perspective, from a delivery perspective, and then you have the overall wellness perspective, which is greater insights so you can prevent cancer. My favorite lesson from Avalanche 101 class was don't get in an avalanche.
That's right.
So that's all I learned, my takeaway. And I think that was the main takeaway. But that's, for us, I think, is that will become more and more of an imperative as we have more and more responsibility. It's going to be messy and it's going to be really difficult. But I do feel like there is going to be a new build of health system, and that we're going to look back 10 years and we're going to see dramatic changes in payment, clinical delivery, and care.
So I couldn't agree with you more, and I think we've talked about it several times on the podcast that we are headed towards a wall that is going to stop this whole thing. Like we can't just keep going on the trajectory we're on. And so you can either get depressed about that and say, oh, the sky is falling, everything's terrible, or the way I look at it is, well, there's massive opportunity to fix things, right? And to come up with that new build. I like that. I'm going to borrow that from you, the new build of the system, because that's what needs to happen, and it is happening. And I think we're seeing, some momentum. I think you mentioned a few things. One thing that I've witnessed, and I'd like to get your take on, is the United States has been the leader in the world for many years, for basically the entire modern age of medicine. We've been the country that really has led the discoveries and led the changes and the new approaches to delivering medicines. And whether you like it or not, I think we've got the best healthcare system in the world, probably the worst delivery system in the world. But there's a lot of good things about what we have. But we've created a system that, like you said, is so hard to change and has so much around it, regulatory and reimbursement, and all of this stuff makes it so hard. Do you think that we're going to lose that position? And I mean, I see it already. China's making changes that are dramatic, and just from the pharma side, which is what I'm most familiar with, we see the number of deals coming out of China with respect to new drugs being licensed to big pharma companies has gone up exponentially in the last few years. So I look at it and think, there's a huge opportunity, but that opportunity might not just be here in the United States. And maybe we got to start thinking more globally about, do I go improve this somewhere else where it's going to be easier to get that done? And a lot of companies like us are doing clinical trials outside the United States because it's so expensive to do them here. Do we go to Australia where they've streamlined the system? Do we go to the Middle East now? The Middle East is they're just saying, come, bring all your innovations here. We've got the infrastructure. We've got great hospitals. We've got trained physicians. And we've got a regulatory system that's basically in its infancy. And so they don't have layers and layers of regulation. Do you think that that's where we're headed, is that maybe the U.S. isn't going to be the leader anymore? And is that a bad thing? Or is it, I think we're never going to not be part of the story, but we've been the whole story really for the last, whatever years, 100 years, whatever it is. But what's your sense of what do you see the future looking like with respect to U.S.'s role in driving innovation in healthcare?
I don't think U.S.'s superiority in healthcare innovation is an entitlement.
Yeah.
So it is definitely earned.
Yep.
And I do believe that there are the core technology, innovation, and from business and technology is in the U.S.
Yeah.
There's a tremendous underlying resource that is there. It's not that we have a monopoly on the market. There's tremendous innovation across the world, but I really feel like there's a unique compilation of resources that are here.
Yeah.
And there are some tremendous challenges. You mentioned the regulatory environment. There is need for drastic regulatory change. Mm-hmm. I also have a lot of hope that technology is going to be helpful in getting through that regulatory change and taking down some of those barriers, reducing costs and so on. So I do have that hope, but it is not something that I think we're going to win in the short term. I think it's going to be a long-term gain. And you mentioned Australia as having a really innovative regulatory environment. I think that's important. We have a WAVE Summit where we bring together top leaders in the country and the world that are academics, technologists, and entrepreneurs and policy leaders. We're talking about the technology and the policy waves that are supporting applied innovation. We had Dr. Sangeeta Reddy of Apollo Hospitals join us, and she shared her innovation at Apollo Hospitals. As Apollo Hospitals is the largest health system in India. And they have tremendous market-driven solutions for low-cost care that is serving many people in India and also in 160 countries around the world. And I think that there's lots of lessons that we learn from other markets and that we can apply to the U.S. From an innovation standpoint, a delivery standpoint, and from a regulatory standpoint.
Yeah, no, I think that makes perfect sense to me, and I think that your point is it is an earned thing that we have the position that we've had. It can go away. I don't think it's going to anytime soon, because part of what we have is a culture that actually values and supports, and people like yourselves that are involved in evaluating and in understanding and seeing the value in something in the future. Most other countries out there, that it's not part of their culture. They invest in earnings, right? They look at it and say, how much your company earn? And most of these companies that you're funding, they don't earn anything. They're going to spend a lot of money without making any money for a while at least. And so that I think, and that's a hard thing. Culture is a hard thing to change. So I think, from my perspective, I look at it and say, there's a lot of stuff happening in the world, but the U.S. still has an opportunity to still remain, and probably will remain, the leader. And part of it is because of the culture that we have to support this. But I think the whole world is going to participate more than they have in the past, where we've been very U.S. centric. And just one last comment on that. Just today, Marty McCary, the FDA commissioner, actually changed the rules for the FDA to allow real world data to be incorporated into medical device and drug applications, where most people don't realize this. If you had a drug that was approved outside the United States and you wanted to get approval in the U.S., the U.S. would say, redo everything you did outside, because we want to do it under our purview, because we believe that we can control, and we have a better quality control system. And they just said today that, hey, if you've got real world data and real people and the outcomes, that we'll take that into account when we look at huge sea change. And that's not going to make headlines, except for people like us, right? I mean, we care about it, but you can already see the impact on we're starting to say we can't just keep doing things the way that we're doing. So we're getting close to wrapping up time, but I just wanted to ask you one last question. I always like to try to end on a hopeful note, to say, as a young entrepreneur out there thinking about, I have an idea that can impact and change this, be part of this new build in the healthcare system. What advice would you give to them of, getting ready to come to somebody like you? What would be the number one thing that you could tell them? Do this, and you're going to get attention from people like me that want to fund new innovations.
I come back to the terms: be persuasive and be pragmatic. And I think if you embody both of those in earnest, that you'll be successful, because you'll be able to navigate the existing challenges that will inevitably exist today and also exist tomorrow. The future is not going to be static. Yeah. It's going to be very dynamic. And the people who are understanding of that dynamic environment are going to be the most successful.
Yeah, and I think it's perfect. And the only thing I can guarantee you is things are not going to be the same that they are today, right? Yes. I can't tell you what it's going to look like. Be. Yeah, but they're not going to be the same. Yeah. So we can guarantee that it's going to be different. But you're right. I think that people ask me all the time, what is it that you look for in people? And it's the same, the persuasiveness, that passion that people have. If that's missing, that's you can't put that into somebody. That's something that has to be inside of you. And my experience is the people that have that passion, because what we do is a roller coaster ride. There are times where it feels like the sky is completely falling and everything's terrible. And then there's times where it feels like we've solved every problem. And you have to have the wherewithal to not ride that roller coaster. Just say, I know that I'm going to be able to make a difference, and that persuasiveness to say, I'm going to make it through regardless this up and down. And right. That's something that has to be inside of something. It's hard to teach people that, but it's really important to have it, right? So when you're evaluating people, you kind of get that right away. You're like, okay, this guy's got that, or this gal's got that type of approach. So, yeah, you find something that you can put that passion behind and become persuasive and pragmatic about. This is the opportunity in front of me. I'm going to change the world.
That's right. Purpose matters.
Purpose matters. It really does. Well, Ryan, thanks so much. This was fun to talk, David. and I've got a really cool idea I want to put in front of you.
Please do.
I always tell people all the time that it's part of this new build. So I've got an idea of how to change the way that we predict toxicity for new therapeutics. So I think you'll really like it.
I'm here. Let's
all right. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for listening today to the Good Medicine Podcast. And if you enjoyed what you heard today and enjoy the content, please subscribe. It helps us to continue to provide these wonderful guests and the topics that we bring to you. So thank you very much, and see you next time. That's it for today's episode of Good Medicine. Thanks for joining us as we explore the science and stories behind health, medicine, and innovation. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's a great zero-cost way to support us. In addition, please click, follow, and leave a review for the podcast on Apple and Spotify. If you have questions or comments for me, please put them in the comments section on YouTube or reach out on all social media platforms at Good Medicine. Links are in the description. The best way to support the podcast is to check out the sponsors of the show. You can do this by looking at the links in the show notes. That's it for today. I'm Dr. David Beers, and we'll see you next time.